All right, so we're starting the next unit. We are doing trig equations now. So our first unit here, first lesson, trig functions with a calculator and simple trig equations. So first thing we're going to look at is angle conversions using a calculator. So instead of putting it in terms of pi, when we go from degrees to radians here, we're going to be putting in terms, we're going to use a decimal instead. So label the approximate decimal value of the quadrantal angles in radians, round radians to 3 decimal places. So I have 0 radians here. I have pi halves radians here. My calculator, I'm going to do pi divided by 2, and I get 1.571 approximately. Okay? Over here I have pi, which is about 3.141, excuse me, 1417, so 142, right? 3.1415, sorry about that. 3 pi halves. 3 pi divided by 2, 4.712. And finally 2 pi. 6.283. All right. So now we're going to use that to answer 1 through 4, determine the quadrant for each angle in radians. So if I have a positive 5, I'm going to go in a positive direction counterclockwise. Greater than 3, greater than 4, less than 6, so it's got to be in the 4th quadrant here. Number 2, 0.487. Well, that's between 0 and 1.5. That's in the 1st quadrant. 2.5. Greater than 1.5, less than 3.1, that's 3rd quadrant. Excuse me, that's 2nd quadrant. And finally, negative 3.5. So now I'm going clockwise. So remember, I'm going to use these numbers, but going clockwise. So this is approximately 1.5, 3.1, 4.7. So it's going to be going clockwise. Negative 3.5 would put me in the 2nd quadrant. Converting from degrees to radians. If I have 155 degrees, I'm going to use the same little thing here. I'm going to say pi over 180. But now, instead of putting it in terms of pi, we're simply going to put it in the calculator. 155 pi divided by 180, and that gives me 2.705 radians. All right, negative 72. I think it's helpful to go on and keep on doing this. Pi over 180. So negative 72 pi divided by 180, negative 1.257. All right, converting from radians to degrees. This says round to the nearest degree. All right, I'm going to say, let's change this a little bit. And in fact, anytime it says round to the nearest degree, which it will usually, it's going to always say that, I'm going to say round to the nearest 10th of a degree. I think we can be a little bit more accurate than 1 degree. That's really not as accurate as, if we go to 3 decimals on radians, I think we should go to at least 1 decimal on the degree. So we're going to round to the nearest 10th of a degree. So please do that from here on out. Whenever it says round to the nearest degree, go to the nearest 10th of a degree, 1 decimal place. So I've got 5.8 radians, 180 degrees, and pi. So I'm going to do 5.8 times 180 divided by pi, and I get that is 332.3 degrees. 332.3 degrees. All right. 0.324 times 180 divided by pi. 0.324 times 180 divided by pi. I got 18.6. 18.6 degrees. Okay. 1 radian. 1 radian is how many degrees? Okay. 1 radian. So what I would do is 1 times 1, it's basically 180 divided by pi, right? I'm going to do 180. I'm going to divide that by pi. All right. This is like if I said 1 times 180 over pi. All right, and I get 57.3 degrees. Okay, and this is exact now, so I can just do, I'm going to store that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to store that. There's a store button down here right above on. Here's my store button down here. So I'm going to store this. You can see it's taking my last answer with the little arrow, and I'm going to store this in X. The X button's right below the mode button. So I'm going to store this in X. All right, so if I put X, it's giving me 57.29. So now, for each of these, I can say 2X for the next one, and I've got 114.6 degrees. 3X, 171.9 degrees. 4X, 229.2 degrees. 5X, 286.5, and 6X, 343.8. Okay? All right, so that's the degrees at all these different ratings. And then once I get, that'll be a full circle. Once I get to 360, I'm in a full circle, which is before I get to 7. It goes only up to about 6.3 radians here. All right. Finding values of trig functions using a calculator. Important note. Always put your calculator in the correct mode before finding any trig values in your calculator. This is super important, guys. If you have a degree sign, make sure you're in degrees. It will tell you at the top of the calculator right here. Notice I'm in radians. The default is radian. If you reset the calculator, it will be in radians. Okay? So to change it to degree, we're going to hit the mode button, which is right next to the second button. Pull it up so you can see here. Right next to the second is mode. All right, and you can do this on Desmos as well. In Desmos, the default actually is degree. And I can see the third line down here is going to be radian in degree. So I'm going to go down here, highlight degree, press enter. And to get out of the mode, I'm going to hit second mode, and it will take me back to what we call the home screen. In fact, no matter where you are in the calculator, if you ever want to get back home, hit second mode, it will take you back to the home screen. Whether you're graphing, anything. Second mode, home screen. All right, so I'm in degrees now. You can see it says degree up at the top of the calculator, and I'm going to do sine of 30 degrees. So sine 30 is 0.5, and we knew that. We knew that sine 30 is equal to 1/2. That was part of the unit circle stuff. Cosine of 47.2 is 0.679. We're always going to round these to 3 decimals, these ratios, just like our radians. We're going to round to 3 decimals. All right, now I'm moving into no degree signs here for the next 3 or 4 here. So I'm going to put this in radians now. So I'm going to go back to mode. Highlight radians, hit enter, second mode to get back out. So tangent of tan of negative 5 pi divided by 8. Notice I'm using the negative sign, which is down at the very bottom here. This is my negative, this is my minus. Those are two different things, minus and negative. This is a negative 5 pi 8. All right, this is 2.414. Cosine of pi over 11. 0.959. All right, with a calculator, tan of 3 pi halves. Tan 3 pi divided by 2 says error domain. So this is undefined with a calculator. All right, without a calculator, I'm at 3 pi halves. That point is at 0, negative 1. Tangent is y over x. This is negative 1 over 0. And sure enough, it is undefined. Okay, and by the way, that is what it will say when it's undefined. We'll get a domain error. All right, the reciprocal functions. This is where we need to be a little bit more careful. Okay? So to do secant of 24 degrees, first thing I want to do, let's get out of here. I'm going to go to mode. I'm going to change back to degrees. Second mode to get out. Secant of 24. Well, secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So 1 over cosine of 24 degrees. So 1 divided by cosine 24 is 1.095. Notice we don't use the little cosine to the negative 1. That is not secant. That is inverse cosine, which will come up later. Okay? Cotangent of negative 206.7. This is the same as 1 over tangent of negative 206.7. So 1 divided by tangent negative 206.7, and I get negative 1.988. All right, cosecant pi 12ths, remember, change it back to radians, second mode. Cosecant's reciprocal of sine, 1 over sine of pi 12ths. So 1 divided by sine of pi, second caret, pi divided by 12, 3.864. Cotangent of pi halves. Cotangent's reciprocal of tangent, 1 over tangent of pi halves. So I'm going to say 1 divided by tangent of pi divided by 2. 1 divided by tangent pi halves. And this says error domain. It is undefined with a calculator. Cotangent of pi halves. Pi halves is the point 0, 1. And we're talking about cotangent, which is x over y. X over y would be 0 over 1, and 0 divided by 1 is 0. So the actual answer is 0, but the calculator told us that it was undefined. Well, the reason the calculator told us it was undefined is because what we put in the calculator was undefined. Tangent is undefined at pi halves, and so 1 divided by something that's undefined is going to be undefined. But cotangent itself is not undefined at pi halves. So let's just write ourselves a note here. Note. Be careful with reciprocal functions at quadrantals. All right? Check all undefined answers. Okay, moving to the last page. Solving simple trig equations. Find values of theta that satisfy the equation for theta between 0 and 360 degrees or theta between 0 and 2 pi. List your results in degrees and radians and do not use a calculator. So I'm putting the calculator aside. So here's the steps. We're going to ignore the sign of the answer and find the reference angle alpha so that, for example, in this first one, sine alpha equals root 3 over 2. Place alpha in the correct quadrants for the sign. Note each trig function has 2 positive quadrants, 2 negative quadrants, so there should be 2 answers unless it is a quadrantal, unless theta is quadrantal. This means that trig functions are not, because we're getting 2 answers, they are not one-to-one. They are not one-to-one functions. Trig functions are not one-to-one. They do not pass the horizontal line test. Okay? So, we're going to say sine of alpha equals root 3 over 2. All right? That's my y. Sine is my y value. So what y value in the first quadrant gives me root 3 over 2? That would be alpha is equal to 60 degrees or pi thirds. All right, now I'm talking about a negative value. So sine is negative in the third and fourth quadrants. So my theta with 60 degrees, I'm going to have 180 plus 60, 240 degrees. I'm going to have 360 minus 60, 300 degrees. Or, in terms of radians, pi thirds, so I'm going to say pi plus pi thirds, 4 pi thirds. Or 2 pi minus pi thirds, 5 pi thirds. Okay? Let's go to number 19. Cotangent theta equals root 3. All right, so I'm going to change this to cotangent alpha equals root 3. So that means that alpha, all right, we're talking about x over y here. So where is x equal to root 3 over 2? Y, this is like root 3 over 1. And remember that this is like over 2 and this is over 2. My x value is root 3 over 2. My y value is 1/2. That would be at 30 degrees or pi 6. Okay? So where is cotangent positive? Cotangent's positive in the first quadrant and in the third quadrant. So that means my theta in the first, getting degrees here, this is going to be 30 degrees, or 180 plus 30, 210. In terms of radians, pi 6, or pi plus pi 6, 7 pi 6. Last one. Cosine theta equals -1. So, this is one, if I get 0, 1, -1, or undefined, my first thought is, well, it's probably quadrantal. So, where is your x value equal to -1? Well, my x value is equal to -1 at 180 degrees or pi, and that is the only place. So theta is equal to 180 degrees, or theta is equal to pi. That is it. Okay? All right, so that's our first lesson for this new unit. I hope that made sense to you. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.